Hello, world.
Hello.
How are you? I think we're live. Are we live? If we're live, somebody say that you see us. Until then, we'll talk nonsensically about some things. I see 7 people are watching. We got some thumbs up happening. So I think this is. That's our. This is
Great.
Okay. So now we're measuring.
We're getting some action.
Okay. So. I'm never scared to talk on Facebook Live. Right now, I'm terrified to talk on Facebook Live. I'm genuinely terrified about the conversation that lies ahead, which is exactly why I think it needs to be had.
Yes, you have been berated online, including by this one.
I've been berated like online and offline. First, let me introduce, this is Effie Epstein. Effie is a partner in Sound Ventures, which is our venture capital firm. She's the newest general partner as of 8 months ago. And I let me explain a little bit how this conversation came to be. And then we'll jump into what some of our goals are and what we hope to accomplish. So from a distance and somewhat intimately have been watching gender workplace conversations happen for quite some time now. There was an article that went out publicly that Natalie Portman was citing that I got paid a number of times more than she did on a movie that we shot together. Which I didn't even really realize. It was several years ago. And when it was brought to my attention, I was like, that's crazy. Because frankly, I would have paid her whatever she wanted to get paid to do that movie, because I was more excited to work with her than I think she was to work with me. And then I worked with my wife on sharing an op-ed that she wrote about gender equality in the workplace and in Hollywood specifically, and have been working pretty tirelessly on ensuring that that's a part of my life and my work across the board. So there's obviously been a lot going on in Silicon Valley where this conversation has come to the forefront. And a lot of people have had the courage to stand up about various abuses that they faced in the workplace. A lot of my employees have come forward with abuses that they've faced, and I think it's amazing that people are having the courage to come up to report these types of things, and that maybe something can be done about it, because this solution is far too far off. So it was my thought that there are a lot of things that are being said and done, and to be a responsible venture capital firm, if we're not addressing this personally and internally, we're screwing ourselves, and screwing over a lot of people that don't deserve to be screwed over. So I reached out to Effie. We're in Budapest right now, so there's a reason why there aren't a bunch of other people in this conversation. We're both in Europe. We were both had to be in Europe, and we're like, let's meet and have a work session. And the work session ended up getting turned into this session, which we've literally spent the entire time that we're supposed to be doing work on our fund talking about this. But this is maybe more important than any individual investment that we have. So I will turn over now the goals of what it is that we hope to accomplish, and then the format of this, what we're hoping is like to reduce and or limit trolling, and actually create a safe place to have this discussion that at some point in time we can leave this in some way, shape, or form better than where we started, which brings me to our goals. So goal number 1 is to learn. That's it. I'm already learning a lot, like so much more than I anticipated learning before this conversation even began. So to clarify, for those of you who aren't aware, on LinkedIn, I started a LinkedIn profile a couple days ago and was like, I'm at a point in time where I need to figure out my LinkedIn collective. and started this LinkedIn profile and posted my first post on LinkedIn, which was relative to this conversation. I posted 5 questions or so that I took all of about a minute and a half to compose mentally. I posted them just to get some firepower to have this conversation with. And the first thing I posted was about dating and flirting in the workplace. Wrong place to start. Just Effie beat the shit out of me about it. My wife has beat the shit out of me about it. I've been publicly beat the shit out about it. Wrong place to start. Got it.
But great example, by the way, of someone who's, trying to actually do things that matter, right? But happened to ask the wrong question. And even though there were some right questions in there, it was tough to get to, because I agree. I mean, I cringed when I read that first question. I said, shit. I mean, this is the last thing we should be talking. Yeah. The last thing that we should be talking about. But I think if the goal here is really collective learning, then we should be able to talk about those mistakes and teach. Like, what I loved is I saw a bunch of Medium posts that were like Dear Ashton posts that actually took the time to talk about why they thought those were the wrong questions and which questions they thought was right. And so if we can create a safe forum for that, because this is a complex issue, we're not going to solve it with a 1-hour stream. If we could have, it already would have been solved. So I think learning and collective learning is the most important thing.
So I got plenty of feedback on that topic, good and bad. Really didn't think about it being the first question and or the last question, or even a question that should be amongst questions. Was legitimately just fishing for, hey, what should this conversation be about? And taking my medicine. The next question I got pretty good and smacked around about was a question that was really meant to be pseudo-provocative with an obvious answer, which is no, relative to making investments in companies that we view to have less merit in order to create equality. Clearly, that's a bad idea. The notion it was meant to be provocative relative to is this an affirmative action effort that should be being taken from a VC perspective in investing in companies in order to create a 50-50 parity in the number of companies that we're investing in that are female-led companies versus the number of companies that are male-led companies, and not meant to be a suggestion, but meant to be a jumping off point for feedback relative to what's the way to get to 50-50, because it's clearly not that. But I understand how it was misinterpreted. I understand how I just did a really shitty job of wording that question and probably wasn't good for a public LinkedIn post. Copy that. Message received. I'm sure I'll receive more. Appreciate it. And then so on from there. I had questions about potential mentoring, potential other ways to create balance, questions about the data relative to gender parity, which we all know is skewed. But all of these questions and more come from a desire to fix this and an understanding that I in no way, shape, or form am an expert. In fact, I'll never be an expert because I can't truly say I've lived in the shoes. So with that, I will turn it over to Effie relative to some of our other goals.
Yeah, perfect. So first and foremost, we want to talk about the things that are uncomfortable for people to talk about. I think one of the most interesting pieces of feedback actually that Ashton got from his initial post is from other men who said that they're really scared to ask questions now because of essentially the slew of negative comments that Ashton got on his post. And they didn't think that if they put their questions out there, that they would be kind of received in the right regard. And that's something that we collectively, I think, can fix. And it goes back to those Medium posts that I mentioned and about how we educate each other, right? Because it's about learning, talking about the hard things, and ultimately sourcing a bunch of ideas that drive action. And on top of that action, it's accountability. It's, I think Reid Hoffman's pledge, decency pledge, is an incredible idea, but we have to put more action behind it. How do we actually hold ourselves accountable for this? It's not just a pat on the back, I signed the pledge and our work is done. It's actually just beginning. So as we were kind of brainstorming for the last few hours, we go back to these numbers. Only 2% of venture funding last year went to women. Only 17% of startups are run by women. Some of this is PitchBook data, some of this are, McKinsey and other sources. There's so many different data points depending on how you kind of cut and slice it, but we know that parity is not there. And this is a big complex issue that includes sexual harassment, it includes sexual assault, it includes bias, both conscious and unconscious. And the more we talked about it, we kind of wanted to bifurcate those issues and perhaps dive in a bit deeper on bias, and specifically unconscious bias, because it's something we all have. I know me, if I was asked directly, are you biased against, anything, I would say, no, of course not. I think that I'm not. But if we start asking each other some questions that dive a little bit deeper below the surface, we realize that we all have it, even when we don't mean to. And so what we thought we could do is potentially brainstorm around what are those questions that we can ask each other that say, maybe it's something that it's a bit of a blind spot for you. Women, race, it could be gender, race, sex, it can be a bunch of different things. And I think that's an important point for us to kind of dive deep.
Yeah, so one of the things that we wanted to set out to do here, from a goal perspective, and then let's jump into the bias stuff, which is like, I feel like I'm so scared.
Do you feel the pressure here, you guys?
I'm so scared to talk about this. It's terrifying. Okay, so what we hope to do from this is aggregate information and then redistribute those resources for both men and women, probably mostly for men, because the assumption is that probably 80% of this problem is men and can be solved by men. But I really, there's all kinds of resources but even when we were trying to come up with satiating data relative to VC, it was like there was varying, conflicting data all over the place. And I truly believe that if you can't measure it, it's really hard to improve it over time, because when you run trial and error, it's really difficult to optimize. So we hope that we can build a collective resource and then redistribute it to this group and to the group on LinkedIn and the group on Twitter and every other social platform we've been talking about this on. And then obviously fourth, like selfishly, I think it is our hope that if there are female founders that are building companies in the space of software and technology, that you come to, we want a strong pipeline of female founders, and we want to see your companies. There was some data that was suggesting that 17% of all startups are being created by women in the tech space, and we're not seeing 17% of our inbound companies are not from women, and we want to increase our pipeline. So selfishly, we're asking to see those companies, and we're also for women who want to become VCs over time. At some point, we'll be adding more general partners to our team, and we'll be hiring. And when we are, we would like to see you as candidates. So selfishly, for all those selfish reasons, I don't want to act like this is like an absolutely altruistic effort, because it's not. So on bifurcating the harassment, sexual assault stuff from blind biases. Listen, the assholes that are sexually assaulting people and sexually harassing people, no more hall passes. That's it. And this is amazing. Like what's happening, and women coming out and putting these, lack of a better word, fuckers down. Great, awesome. No more hall passes. It's done. On the blind bias thing, it's so deep that I would love to hear and understand from this audience how to unearth it. Now, some of the things that we've found just from the conversations that have come up prior to this, there's actually a bias test that was created. Do you have a link for that in case anybody wants to check it out?
Yeah, we can post it around.
We'll post it around after, but there's a bias test. It's like Harvard there's a Harvard bias test that we pulled up somewhere that I thought was like super interesting. That it's a series of questions that actually check to see what your biases are, whether or not you have them, blind biases that is. But when it comes to like investing in companies, because that's specifically where our head is relative to this, we were talking about resumes.
Yep.
And you brought up the fact of like, why are names even on resumes? And for God's sakes, why are they the big bold at the top? And when you brought this up to me, and I was like, well, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
And which may well be a blind bias. That being said, I have like my media company is 80% female employees. The foundation that I helped found is all females in the C-suite, 80% females. That being said, our technical team is 4 dudes, and we're working on changing that.
Yeah.
Our fund, we're 50-50 from a blend. If we have one more general partner, then we'd be 50-50 there. So I feel like I don't have these biases, and I feel like a lot of these issues that I hear about are somebody else's problems, because internally inside of my organization, there's so many women that you go, well, this doesn't happen. And then you read the stuff that people send, and you're just like, this is crazy, right? Because I have had an outpouring of the people internal inside of the companies that I'm involved with from a management level that are just go like, let me just explain to you where it's at. Let me explain to you what the abuse looks like. Let me explain to you how guys are basically propositioning me straight up and leveraging access to resources. I'm not doing a very good job of bifurcating. So on the blind bias thing, I went, well, there's no way. And then I go, well, it's blind bias. So then how do you know?
Exactly.
And you don't know until you implement the changes.
And I think a way to do it, exactly, but look at the incoming pipeline. What does that look like? I think there are 2 issues. One is people coming into the pipeline. How does that look? And then people actually make it through and then grow within an organization. I think as a woman, for me, working largely in male-dominated industries for the last decade plus, to look up and not see very many women at the top is a huge challenge. So how do we get more women to the top? Okay, well, throughout all these different segments, right, of the pipeline, as they go from junior levels all the way to senior levels, what kind of tools and resources and support are we providing, not just for women, but for women and other minorities and people who perhaps are underrepresented that aren't different or more than what a typical white male would get, but that that you have access to them. And I think, coaching and mentoring is a great example of that. But I know that for me personally, kind of looking up and seeing another woman in a position of power was incredibly important. So we take that into the funding realm. And so we look at how many female VCs are actually decision makers. And most of us, I'm sure in this audience, know the number. It's less than 10%, it's 7%. A number's actually gone down with time. So if that's the case, are we really able to get parity on the entrepreneur side and fund enough female companies if we don't have enough decision makers that are women?
So I sort of think about when I look at companies that are servicing a female audience and the way that we process those companies. So part of making an investment in a company is your gut relative to the product, right? Like, I lived in an Airbnb for X period of time and determined based on that, I want to invest in Airbnb. I rode in an Uber and went, wow, that was really easy. So I think part of it is when you have female founded companies that are building female direct products, I'm not going to try on a bra. Mm-hmm. I don't have an experience with a tampon. I looked at like 5 breast pump companies like a year ago because my wife was pumping, and I was like, this is crazy. Like, there's not a better solution for this, and found a bunch of them. Did not end up investing in any. Maybe I didn't get over the hurdle because I couldn't experience the product.
But does that matter?
Well,
do you have to
is there a blind bias relative
to
it? Well, do I have to experience it, or do I have to be working with someone who can and then can tell me, right? So for the breast pump, this was before you started working with us, and I imagine you're going to pump milk anytime soon. But so I was like, I talked to my wife. I was like, and I actually had my wife and her friend who had both breastfed and pumped milk. I had them do the diligence call for me and then give me feedback. They dissuaded me from investing because they didn't think it was right. And that was the closest I got, right? In the same way, if I'm going to invest in a med tech company, I'm going to have a friend who's in that space, a doctor who would actually use that, piece of software, go, hey, this is great or this isn't. But having females inside of the VC firm and at the general partner firm at the decision level of the firm allows you to be interested in companies that you may not even realize there's a problem in. Right. So I only have awareness of the problems that I'm aware of, or that somebody comes and presents to me strongly that, hey, you should have an awareness of this problem. You have an entirely different problem set that you're aware of as a female investor.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think it's actually really easy to hide behind, for investors to hide behind, oh, this is, a female product, or it's too small of a market size, so we're not going to invest. The fact is, there are plenty of incredible women who are building incredible businesses that happen to be serving women, who, by the way, have a large share of wallet. And, from a consumer perspective, we know what those statistics look like. But I know that for me, coming new into the seat, I got an influx of pitches from women. Mostly were cold emails, and many of them, the majority, were female-specific products or platforms. And as we were talking through this, and we were talking about, can these companies be huge? Are they venture-backed companies?
We're looking at what is the total addressable market relative to what it is that they're building.
And I think the assumption is it's too small to begin with, but that's not the case.
Well, part of the assumption is you've just split your market in half because, and by the way, in a fraction of a half, because how many women are right? So like there's a general misconception that starts the conversation, which is like, you just like reduce your market, and you go like, but wait a second, do the math.
Right. Exactly.
When you do the math, you go, well, okay.
And by the way, I think here the onus is actually on women. If there is one, and this is anecdotal, but one difference I've seen between female entrepreneurs who pitch me versus male is that female entrepreneurs will come in and tell me exactly what they know they can achieve or what they believe they can achieve. And so they typically show me a smaller market size in smaller numbers overall, versus a male is going to sell me on the potential and the vision, the grand vision. And so he usually adds a zero to whatever number.
50-year,
exactly.
The actual market size here is 600 billion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, as women, I think one of the things where we can help each other, and I think especially I would love for male VCs to do this, but especially for female VCs to kind of coach and mentor female entrepreneurs around the story and storytelling. And how can we tell the right story to the audience that shows the vision of what you want to build and what you are building? Don't think that you need to go in there and just show what you know you can achieve in the next 12 months. Sell us on the 3 and 5 year vision, and then we can help you get there. But I think that distinction was really interesting for me in the last few months.
I think it's huge. I actually want to use, because you said coaching people on the story. And I actually just wanted, there was one thing that came up in an earlier conversation we were having about the story that I think is it's kind of crazy and probably could say. So when we talk about wanting to get to a point of having 50% of the companies that we're looking at be female-driven companies, and then we talk about, we really get to the root of how are these companies formed, right? They usually start with a couple founders that have a friendship that they don't work their way up through the workforce. They announce themselves as CEO, founder of the company, and start building it, right? Happens. Well, that's the world that we're looking at. And usually they're friends and they build the company, and then they're 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 employees deep before they're going, oh wait, we maybe start thinking about some of these things like diversity inside of our organization. They're not thinking about diversity with employee 1 or employee 2. They're going, I want to work with this dude, I want to work with this person. So relative to storytelling, we were talking about that. I said, name your favorite movie that you've ever seen that is about a heterosexual male and female friendship. What's your favorite one? I'm just going to look at the comments really quick and just see what everybody says.
And I said My Best Friend's Wedding, which doesn't count.
No, well, because if it's a gay guy and a girl, I'm talking about heterosexual, your favorite. I only want to hear your favorite. What's your favorite movie about heterosexual best friend guy girl where there's no sexual or dating relationship involved at all. What's your favorite one? Just your favorite. I'm not getting anything.
Because
Ender's Game. I don't know. I haven't seen that one. just Harry Met Sally. Well, come on. That's the account. No, that doesn't count. Totally, just friendship. Nothing happens. So part of the problem is that these stories just don't get told. We don't even have. We don't even have. It's hard to think of a movie where it was like just a guy and a girl, both heterosexual friends, working on a similar goal, and where it never was their relationship, because story architecture hasn't historically supported that, and so nobody tells those stories. And so then the problem is that when people are starting companies, which usually start out of friendships, there's not heterosexual male-female friendships that are the organic compost of building the new that is. It just doesn't exist because we don't even have story architecture for ourselves in our minds to start thinking about it that way. And so it's not surprising that companies 20, 30 employees deep are going, whoa, we've got a diversity issue here. And now you're trying to hire your way out of a problem that is a mess because culturally we actually don't even support the storytelling of these kinds of relationships being valuable.
And what's already formed in the culture already, right, with your first 30 employees. I mean, going from 0 to 30, a lot of the core kind of pillars, forget what's written on your values on the website. The core pillars are already built, during that time, or definitely solidifying.
For sure. And so I think that we societally, on a bigger picture, need to think about storytelling relative to this. Like, maybe like Scout and Gemfish. They're brother and sister, right? Like I want those stories to find their way into the universe because I think it's important relative to this. And I also think that for founders and companies to think about it on like employee number 3. Think about it on employee number 4 because we know these companies, all companies, hire from within, right? You go, we have a candidate, we have a position open, and everybody inside the organization starts vying to get their person in that seat. And by the way, when we have relationships that are happening and our significant other is afraid of us being in a working relationship with someone of the other sex, or you have those types of scenarios that play out, you cannot build a diverse organization that way. And so I think we have to think of it from a story, like this is universal, this isn't just building a company, this is like how do we tell stories that support these ecosystems to create this equality across the board.
So I take that and I think back to the pipeline of candidates. So from a networking perspective, that's a great example. So we don't see, the stat right now, like we mentioned, 17% of companies are founded by females, and that's not what we see. Maybe 10% of the pitches we see are from female-led organizations. So we're not seeing the pipeline.
And we did like a retroactive analysis where we had 8% of the companies across my last fund and this fund have been female-founded companies, 8%. Yep. But it's not 17%, we're not seeing 17%.
So why are we not? Right? So how are women building their networks in a different way than men are, and how do we help kind of integrate the two? Like I think, and this is anecdotal, but some of the networking events that I've been to that are female oriented, some of the conversations typically revolve around work-life balance. Now, I think that is a critical issue, and I'm not taking away from the importance of that. But if I compare that to network events, or co-ed, call it, the conversations about content, about themes, about connecting the dots between entrepreneurs, potential partners on the business side, or whatever it may be, and it's never about work-life balance. So how do we change the conversation when women get together to talk about the things that are really important in our personal life, but also how we promote each other as investors, as entrepreneurs, as businesswomen, women, to continue to grow and ultimately be able to access our funds or any of the other funds within Silicon Valley, Los Angeles, New York, or globally?
I think looking at our own operations of we source most of the companies from the founders of the existing
That's right.
companies that we're invested in. And if 90% of the companies that we're existing in, 90% of the companies we're going to source are going to come from those, and 10%, and our numbers are going to stay flat. So we have to find ways to create a better pipeline for ourselves that is more diverse. Now, by the way, I would also like to point out this conversation we've been talking about gender because it's at the forefront, but there's systemic ageism, there's systemic racism, there's systemic I mean and a lot of the feedback I've gotten just from the questions I started was like, why aren't you talking about this? And I go like, well, this is topical at this moment, and a lot of people are coming out, and so support the ball that's already moving at an extraordinary pace. But I think that we have to find a way internally to implement true sourcing actions that get us access that is more broad.
And would love to hear from women in this forum. What have you found to be a great way to actually go out there and kind of hunt for new funding, if you will? Is it purely through introductions? Have you found, conferences to be helpful or whatever it may be? We'd love to understand that better so that we can be better about finding you guys as well.
So with that, we've talked a ton, and you guys have written a whole bunch, and we were so busy talking that I saw Harry met Sally. So if you guys want to chime in, I'd love to take some questions and reintroduce them to the group and connect up here. So it's brands like ours that support women that get access to resources and investors. So that's women who start up. So you guys may well be a resource that we should reach out to. More movies. Just okay, off topic. The big reason women's conversations are on work-life balance versus partnership ideas is that men don't have the same level of home responsibilities as women, and women are working outside and home and inside the home. That's a good point.
That's a great point.
I'm currently in Budapest while my wife is shooting film, and she basically spends 6 months where she's the primary caregiver at home, and I spend 6 months where I'm the primary caregiver at home while she's working. And we found a way in our life to split it up. We're really lucky to have jobs that we can do that. Where I can do my VC work remotely and she can do her production work remotely, and we can figure that out. Most people aren't that lucky. One of the things relative to that, and relative to work-life balance, is I actually think that we need to start having a serious conversation in the United States, at least, about nursery care that is government supported. It if the assumption is that at some point in your career, you're going to have to make a choice between your career and raising your kids, and you're going to have to make that choice for maybe a year, maybe 2 years, however long it takes to get your kids into preschool and or kindergarten. And that's not going to be supported. And for a lot of people, their wages at this point, they go like, well, wait a second, everything I make is going towards daycare, so why don't I just stay home and take care of my kids? I think it's crazy. And on the other side of that, until paternity leave becomes an equal opportunity situation across the board for fathers, so that they can split it. Basically, if I look at it, I go all right, you got about 18 months at the very least before you want to start any kind of daycare as a parent, at the very least, and somehow you got to cut the pie. And if it's all the burden always goes to the female counterpart to cut that pie up, it's broken. Your advancement inside of an organization is screwed.
Absolutely.
So we've got to figure that piece out. Right. I think it's a huge piece that if we're going to really have this conversation, we really need to think about.
And I think, by the way, the conversation itself about work-life balance is so important. I know I've gained so much from these conversations when I've talked to friends and mentors. I'm just saying that it shouldn't be the majority of the time talked about that, just so we can make sure that we really hit on other topics that will help advance us too from the business perspective. It's not that should go away, but I don't want that to be the default. When you think about a female event, that it has to be about work-life balance.
Indeed. I also, yes, a single parent. The only reason I ever needed government assistance was to have help. Yeah, there it is. I think it just happens all the time, and I think we really would take it seriously as a country instead of some of the other things that we decide to take care of. Might be pretty smart. I'm the breadwinner. Well, now I just started another loop of that conversation because I'm behind on all this stuff. Let female founders apply YC style. Put threshold difficulty in the process so you don't get spam.
We'd love to see more pitches from, and we were talking about this earlier actually. We have kind of a generic inbox, and then, Ashton has his personal inbox, and the overwhelming majority of the people who reach out to you cold are men. Yeah,
female founders, you guys aren't sending enough cold call emails, unless you just don't want us to invest, which is totally based on the feedback I've gotten the last couple of days of things that I've said, maybe I'm just kryptonite, but I don't get even remotely close to the number of cold emails from female founders as I do from men. It's so I think part of it is just buck up and send an email. That's just that's got to happen. And I don't know how we encourage that more, but you got to get aggressive. Because people are fighting for allocations in great companies. Creating demand, part of creating demand is actually reaching out. And by the way, more intelligently is getting a warm introduction, because that's always going to move it to the front of the line. But at the same time, if you don't have a way in, find one.
And I think the onus too is on us, the female VCs, to go and help and find other women to, if I think about a fundraising process, I'm sure their first approach is to go through all the warm introductions they can and then do some of the cold outreach. But if you know that you have some champions within the venture community, I think that's incredibly critical. And maybe as female VCs, we can take a pledge to give feedback to every female entrepreneur that comes across our desk, so we can help coach them along the way. I know that's something that I've tried to do. I know it's something that others have tried to do as well. But let's do that, right? Support each other, help female entrepreneurs. It would be great if male VCs jumped in in that as well. And I think that's a way, if you think about going back to unconscious bias and asking yourself the questions, does that exist in my world? This is a way where there's real action behind it. Help female entrepreneurs, because there's been such a long time where they've been in the dark.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I also think that, so if we look from a raw numbers perspective, and you plug back into the number of people getting educated in this particular space, in diversity. I'm so afraid to say the wrong thing. I can't even tell you. And I probably already said it 20 times. In diverse people getting degrees in this space, and then we look at the number of companies being created and the number of companies that are being funded. Clearly, there's a raw talent pool that's existing in the space that's not being accessed. So from a returns perspective, there's opportunity to be had there.
Absolutely.
I think the biggest question is, one, how do we get more people starting companies? Two, how do we discover them? And three, how do we get subsequent funding for those individuals? I think to me, those are the biggest questions. And then how do we create support systems? So as somebody that wants to serve people that are trying to build out the companies, one of the things you alluded to is giving feedback on pitches to female founders. I think that I could take a cue from that and go, wait a second, for female founders and founders that come from diverse backgrounds, giving productive feedback regardless, I think is a cue that I think I can take and a lot of other people can take that will be super, super valuable. Other things that we and I have discovered in the process. So one of the things is somebody mentioned panels and having equal distribution on panels. And I think that that's huge. I was on a panel for Rotary International talking about the work that we're doing at Thorn, and the panel was 3 white dudes. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wait a second, we're talking about human trafficking here, and the panel's 3 white dudes.
Yeah.
And then there was a female survivor who came out and spoke like after the panel, sort of. Like it was like this, and by the way, she made us all look like idiots because her what she said was so brilliant. And when I found out she wasn't on the panel and that there was no female representation in the panel, I was like, I can't go on this panel. Like it was like I found out like 10 minutes before, probably because I just didn't do my homework, and I was appalled. Yeah. And it happens all the time in tech, and I think having diverse panels, not just diverse but like equal panels, whenever possible, is a huge coup and should happen.
And it's one of the posts actually we spent a lot of time talking on from Claudia Ianezzo at Alpha Prime. She wrote a phenomenal post. I know it's all over your
Amazing.
LinkedIn, and I highly recommend that people read it. But she, I think, in there did a really good job of kind of highlighting some actionable things that we can do. One of them was the panel point. Another is about amplifying women's voices and how we do that. And that can be both in kind of meetings. For the ladies who are listening, I know we have all been there. I know I've been there, where I will state an idea, and someone else a couple minutes later will state it as if it was their own, and everyone oohs and ahs at the brilliance of this person. And it's tough, and I think it happens a lot in the junior levels. It can happen also in the senior levels. So how do we really help each other in meetings, outside of meetings, right? Think about for the investors in the room, in your investment committee. How do you talk about female entrepreneurs and the ideas they brought to the table? How do you guys have those discussions relative to how you discuss other types of entrepreneurs who come to you? And I really like that point in her post.
I can't express I'm 100% sure I've done this. Like historically, I steal other people's ideas all the time, but like I'm relatively gender neutral. I think about the ideas that I steal. I steal them all the time. I'm going to steal yours right now. It's crazy. Like because once somebody pointed it out to me, and it wasn't that long ago that somebody pointed this out to me. I started watching. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like people steal women's ideas and then rephrase them, and then everybody in the room compliments the dude for saying the exact same thing that the woman said, and you're like, this is nuts.
Yeah.
And so the article that Effie was sourcing, we'll post it after this with a bunch of other resources, but it was basically saying like when you see this happening, it's not enough that you don't do it, but when you see it happening in groupthink in a meeting, point it out and actually point out who the source was, and then ask them for more input based on it, which I thought was actually quite brilliant. And also in social media, finding ways to actually highlight cross-gender, great ideas, and cross ethnicity and cross diversity, great ideas. I think is really important and super valuable, and it actually means something.
Absolutely.
So white dudes, it means something. Look for it. See who you're following. Look for it. It means something. It's valuable.
Right.
I'm going to do that more and make a conscious effort to do it more because I thought that this idea was really, really great.
Another thing we chatted about was, do female entrepreneurs and female investors want to be known as female entrepreneurs and female investors, or just as entrepreneurs and investors? And we were going back and forth.
Hold on a second. You got this. You got this for a second? I got a baby thing.
Crying baby. This is true. He is on daddy daycare. But it's something I reflected a lot about. For me, do I want to be known as a female investor? And I think where I landed, and I'm still figuring it out, is no. I just want to be known as an investor who hopefully supports all different types of entrepreneurs. But then behind the scenes, I think the female part is really important. So behind the scenes, I want to be known as someone who is so supportive of women, and women can come to me, and I'm a resource and a helping hand for them. But to the community, I'm just an investor. And so I'm curious for people who are listening in on the entrepreneur investor side, how do you think about it for the ladies?
Did you talk about the introduction thing?
No. Oh, that's a good one.
So this is relative to this point we were talking about and I would love feedback from the collective on this. So we were talking about whether when I introduce Effie as a co-partner in our fund, Do I introduce her as a partner? Do I introduce her as a COO?
Yeah.
Do I introduce her as a female VC? Do I introduce, not, like, what's the most supportive, you say no,
Yeah.
obviously, clearly, but what is the most supportive way?
Exactly.
Like, do I introduce a founder as a female founder when I'm introducing to a VC? Because hopefully from this conversation, more VCs go, we need to invest in more female-driven companies. Let's make sure that everybody takes a really good look at this one.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you get inundated and you have to prioritize what you're going to look at. And making the female company's priority is important. So does it behoove people for us to introduce them as a female founder or not?
Yeah.
Would love to see what people think.
Yeah.
Yay or nay on that. Just a thumbs up, thumbs down. Hearts. Yeah. People are hearty, but I don't know if you're hearty because you love this.
And I would say for me, what I've seen in venture is that a lot of the women in venture happen to land in functional roles, whether it's a CFO, COO, or platform, or one of those things. And I think it's really important for the decision makers to be positioned as such. And so I think that's critical. And it's interesting, when I get referrals for female entrepreneurs from other investors, I would say more time than not, they mention female entrepreneur in the body of the email versus just a great entrepreneur.
They do.
Yeah.
Yes, female, once you beat into the heads that females can do the same as males. That's from Brandon, but that's from a dude. So you don't count.
Where are the ladies?
See, this is the guy. I have bias against these guys at this moment. Mila. People don't know that's Mila, so I can't tell you which one that is. I think it weakens the power of the woman VC. People. Everyone's different.
Mm-hmm.
If you're introduced as a female, it seems like an anomaly, not the norm.
It's interesting.
I love that Mila is secretly watching and commenting under an alias that nobody knows. It makes me really happy right now. She was going to join if she got home from work in time, but she didn't. She's probably, yes, let them know it's a woman so they understand that women are equal. I don't know about this one.
Yep.
Introduce us who they are. Expand the conversation to all different types of the workforce. So I don't think we have a result on this one. Maybe this is like good for a poll.
Yeah.
I personally, this could be totally wrong. Here's where I might say the totally wrong thing. I would never want to nominate one of my friends as a female in the female category of anything. I actually find it wrong. Like, in so much as so if I take like a person, like just any kind of a personal reference relative to this, when I see myself on celebrity investor lists, I'm like, I'll hold my returns up against all investors, right? I'll hold my ethics up against all investors. Why am I being put on the celebrity investor list? Like, to me, it feels like it's like a lesser thing.
Right.
And when I see like women in tech lists, part of me goes, cool, this will inspire girls to become engineers and learn to code, and there's some awesome organizations that are doing that. But part of me just goes like, why can't she just be a badass coder? Like, why does it have to be the women in tech list? Or like, why can't you just be like on a badass entrepreneur list? Why is it the women in whatever list? Like, it makes me cringe a little bit. And I don't, maybe it shouldn't. And maybe I should be looking at this going like, this is a badass, and she's a badass woman, and we should, being someone who's looking for female founders to invest in order to increase the number of companies that we have, maybe this is the greatest thing in the world because it actually brings, highlights the company and brings promotion to the company. But I look at like a company like House. We were talking about this earlier. I don't think people look at House, because you were talking about that there's no unicorn companies that are female-led in the Valley, and I go like, what about House? Like, we're investors in House, and Adi runs that. She's the CEO of that company. Like, but I don't think she's ever on any of those lists, because she's just a badass that's just running her company, and I kind of think that's cool too. So I don't know whether or not, I don't know how to feel about that. Maybe it means that it's kind of sort of dealer's choice.
Right.
But being someone who wants to support the better version, which way do we go?
Right. Yep.
should speak through itself. Great, whatever role. I'm trying to see what people are saying. No, your thought is spot on. That's what Christine says. Well, I like validation, so I'll take it. Even though,
I think going back to the unconscious bias, we'll probably start wrapping this up in a couple of minutes, but what questions can we ask ourselves and each other to understand whether we have some sort of unconscious bias? Is it looking around you and asking, who do I typically go to for advice, right? Who's my personal set of advisors, if you will? And if a male happens to ask himself that and realizes all the close folks around him are males, that could inadvertently cause him to have some sort of unconscious bias, right? Because he doesn't have different perspectives kind of in his circle. That's one example.
Yeah, I have my mentors are women that I work with across the board, in like the CEOs that I work with at companies that we're invested in, my wife. Yeah. You like, but if I really like broke down and went, all right, well, who are my mentors, right? If somebody said, who are your mentors, I would list off 3 guys, and they're all guys.
Yeah.
Like, and I have a female mentor.
Yeah.
And I think that like that's something, because part of this is about having the conversation with. I mean, the assholes that are harassing people and assaulting, what the fuck are we gonna do? Like, you're idiots. Like, this is like that's a whole other can of worms that we got to break open, and we can break open what companies can do about that. But for the guys that are trying to do the right thing and want to do more of it, I think finding female mentors. Effie's idea, by the way, that I'm stealing again. I think it's brilliant, and I actually have to look back and. From women I've met in this space, be it Padmasri Warrior or Mitchell Baker or like an Esther Dyson or like these badass women who are crushing whatever it is that they're going to do in life. I need to like really plug into like who that person is for me. Because I think it does change the way and by the way, before I post some stupid thing on LinkedIn, I can call them and be like, by the way, I could have called you. It was like Time Joan Mumbo, God, I still feel so stupid. Okay.
But listen, this is really good because we need to, first of all, it's good you got berated. I think hopefully the feedback from this will be just constructive. A lot of feedback you got, by the way, was constructive. I have to say, like, there's some comments that, maybe weren't, but for the most part, I feel like women were really constructive about it, which is great. But I think ultimately, hi.
We're live, so if you don't want him to be live.
I the baby.
Okay. Here, I'll hold him here.
We have another badass woman.
We have one more badass woman who cares about this issue, the one who said what's up. What's
I was
up?
only snooping on the internet.
Your alias popped up and I was like, wait, she's watching. I got really excited.
I was in the car ride home and I was like, I'm going to chime in on this. And I saw the baby when I came in. Great job, you guys. Hi. So
Mila's the one who was responsible for explaining to me how arrogant my post was. So that was helpful.
But the point is, I think, like, it's okay if guys ask questions that maybe we view as inappropriate or kind of, continuing to, spur some of the stereotypes we're talking about, because we need to squash those. And the only way to squash them is if guys feel comfortable enough asking the questions. And I think most of the guys who will come out and ask the questions, I hope, are really coming from a good place. And they want to be able to understand what they can do to be an ally to women, right? As we think about helping men help us, what advice and guidance can we give them to do that? And I think part of it is, like we said, giving feedback to female entrepreneurs, I think, is a great way to be an ally to women. Looking around and just observing in meetings how female colleagues are being being treated in a meeting, I think, is a great way to be an ally. Figuring out that it's okay, you can build a one-on-one relationship without being scared of like sexual harassment or something like that. Women want we want true professional relationships with people who we work with, and I think that there's a really great way that we can go about building that if we continue to put these ideas forth and talk about them and figure out what could work and what can't, and it'll be different for different people.
Can I add one thing to it though?
Add one thing.
Is because of what happened with the internet and your LinkedIn thing, I just want to say that I think that I, as a woman, and I'm going to speak on my behalf, have a tendency to sometimes get caught up on semantics. Meaning like the choice of words. instead of the ideals of it. And I think a lot of times I find myself nitpicking someone's sentence without realizing what their intent is. And then I start getting upset over their choice of words versus what they're trying to say. So though you may have worded some of your questions, I think, with an insensitive tone, your intent wasn't insensitive. And so I think that a lot of times that's something that I have to be aware of as a person. I don't know if that goes towards women or not, but I know that I do get caught up on choice of words.
Right.
I do. Yeah. And I become very sensitive about that.
What an amazing personal knowledge. I think that if I look at like probably like the majority of our disagreements, from my perspective, it is not understanding why you're getting so upset about something, and from your perspective, it is not understanding how I cannot have sympathy for something, or not actually be sympathetic towards something, or be so insensitive relative to something. And so, but you know, it's actually
much of it is choice of words.
How much of it is the female brain versus the male brain, which is an amazing books. There's a book called The Female Brain and the Male Brain, which I highly recommend, which actually explain where a source of some of this stuff comes from. Not all of it, but some of it. So here's the thing. We're going to wrap this thing up. It's been about an hour. It was a good chat.
We want it to be one of many, first of many.
Well, I hope it's the first of many. I'd love to bring some founders of our companies that we've invested in on. I'd love to bring some other folks that I think have really relative voices into this conversation. And hopefully in the future, I talk a lot less, and I can really use this platform for what it is, which is amplifying the voices of all of you. But as an introductory, we're off. And it was really cool. And thank you for all of your comments. I'm going to read through many, many more as the evening goes on. But I appreciate you all, and thank you for your understanding, and thank you for your patience with my lack of knowledge and your understanding of my desire to learn. So I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Peace out, guys. Be well.